All right, welcome to the first video for this lesson. This is actually for finishing 6.1. I know in my first period we didn't quite get to this, so I want the first video to be about that. This right here is talking about compound interest. Now, remember, compound interest is a formula that is used to calculate the interest earned over a certain period of times when you know things like the interest rate, the amount of time, and how often that interest is compounded. So here's your formula right here. A equals P times the quantity 1 plus R over N to the N times T power. Now, I want to explain what each of these values is. The amount A is just how much money you have in the account over however many period of time. So that period of time is our variable T. So A is however much money we have in our account after T years has gone by. P is the initial amount that was deposited into the account. So P is your starting amount. 1 plus, we have R, which is a decimal. That is your interest rate. So remember from class, we were converting percentages into decimals. So be careful that when you convert a percentage like 10% to a decimal, that's 0.1. Remember, when you do 1% into a decimal, it's 0.01. And this last variable that we have is N. N is the number of times your interest is compounded per year. So you're going to hear some different terms here. The options that you're going to have for this are annually, quarterly, and monthly. So if you compound your interest annually, then N would be equal to 1 because that's just once per year. If you compound your interest quarterly, that would be 4 because there's 4 quarters in a year. So that would mean N would be 4 because you compound your interest 4 times per year. Or if you do it monthly, then N would be equal to 12 because there's 12 months in a year. So you're compounding your interest 12 times. So it'd be equal to 12. So remember, this is an exponential growth formula. So just like your growth where you have 1 plus your rate, the only difference here is you're dividing your rate by the number of times you're compounding it per year. And then with your exponent, instead of just t being equal to the number of years, you're multiplying that by the number of times you're compounding it per year. So this is your compound interest formula. A lot of these problems are really simple because it's just a matter of figuring out the numbers for each of these variables and just plugging them in. So let's look at one of these problems right here. So here's our compound interest problem. So we deposit $9,000 into an account that pays 1.46% annual interest. Find the balance after 3 years when the interest is compounded quarterly. So let's look at a couple things. We want to go ahead and look at our formula first. So remember, A is the amount that's left in our account after T years goes by. So some of the information we know, this is compounded quarterly. So what that's going to mean is that we are going to have 4 times per year means that our N value is going to be equal to 4. Now remember, if it was monthly, N would be equal to 12, and if it was annually, N would be equal to 1. Let's think about our other amounts. P, that's our initial amount. So P is just going to equal 9,000. Let's think about our other amounts here. We want to figure out our R value. So R, it says 1.46% annual interest. Remember, we just move our decimal place over 2, so that's 0.0146. And in this case, we're trying to find the balance after 3 years. So in this case, your balance or your time is t equal to 3. So right now we have all the information that we need. We have our initial amount, we have our rate divided by our number of times compounded annually, and we take all that to the exponent of n times t, so to the 12th exponent. So let's just look at this solved out. All we do now is we just plug these values in here. Now, obviously you're going to use a calculator to solve this. The biggest, the most common mistakes in these types of problems are just making a mistake with your calculator, because it's really easy to figure out these values. So here, we're just going to take 1 plus this this decimal first, take that whole thing to the 12th power, multiply it by 9,000, and you'll get 9,402.21. So you'll see after 3 years, the balance in your account, it's gone up from 9,000 to 9,402. So without doing anything, just by earning interest over 3 years, you've earned $402. So that's how you that's how you calculate a compound interest problem. So anyways, again, make sure you use your calculator, because that is the biggest room for error, and just be careful as you go through these.